Everyone remembers Draco Malfoy as the kid who sneered his way through 6 movies. Blonde hair slicked back, wand pointed at Harry before he'd even said hello, always looking for a reason to feel superior. But strip away the sneer, and you find a boy who was never actually afraid of dying. He was afraid of something worse. Because in the Malfoy household, failure wasn't just embarrassing. Failure was the one unforgivable sin. Let's start at the beginning, because Draco didn't choose this fear. It was installed in him before he could even talk. Lucius Malfoy was a Death Eater in the First Wizarding War, one of Voldemort's inner circle, and when the Dark Lord fell in 1981, Lucius didn't grieve. He adapted. He claimed the Imperius Curse made him do it, bought his way back into polite society with gold and charm, and spent the next 13 years rebuilding the Malfoy name like nothing had happened. That's the lesson Draco grew up watching. Not stand for something, not fight for what's right. The lesson was, appearances are survival, and the moment you slip, you're finished. So by the time Draco boarded the Hogwarts Express at 11 years old, he wasn't just a snob. He was a boy performing a role his father had rehearsed him for since birth. Watch how he introduces himself to Harry Potter on that train. He doesn't ask Harry's name first. He tells Harry who matters and who doesn't, sorting the world into worthy and unworthy before he's even sat down. That's not a personality quirk. That's a child repeating exactly what he's heard at his own dinner table. And here's where it gets interesting, because Draco's fear wasn't really about blood purity itself. Plenty of pureblood families in the books never turned their children into anxious performers. The Weasleys are pureblood too, and their house is loud and warm and forgiving. The difference is Lucius ran his household like a corporation with only one acceptable outcome: excellence, visible, constant, unquestionable. Anything less brought consequences. We see this directly in the books. When Lucius fails to retrieve the prophecy from the Department of Mysteries in Order of the Phoenix, he gets thrown in Azkaban, and Voldemort doesn't offer him sympathy. He punishes the entire family for it. That single failure at the Ministry is the hinge the rest of Draco's story swings on, because in Half-Blood Prince, Voldemort needs to punish Lucius, and he decides the cruelest way to do it isn't to hurt Lucius directly. It's to hand his 16-year-old son an impossible task and dare the family to fail again. The task: kill Albus Dumbledore. Think about what that actually means for a 16-year-old boy. This isn't a reward. It's a death sentence, wearing the mask of an honor. Voldemort knows Draco can't kill Dumbledore. Dumbledore is one of the most powerful wizards alive. What Voldemort is really doing is setting up Draco to fail publicly, so he has an excuse to destroy the entire Malfoy family and make an example out of them. And somewhere in that manner, Draco understood this. You can see it the moment Professor Snape makes the unbreakable vow with Narcissa in the opening chapters of Half-Blood Prince. A mother so terrified for her son's life that she's willing to bind her own body to a magical contract just to buy him a safety net. That's the real horror sitting underneath Draco's arc for that entire school year, not will he succeed. Everyone watching, including Draco, quietly knows he won't. The horror is what happens after he fails. So Draco spends his 6th year falling apart in plain sight, and most of Hogwarts reads it as him being moodier and meaner than usual. He's ditching his friends. He's disappearing into the room of requirement for hours. He's crying in a bathroom, alone, when Harry finds him and nearly kills him with a spell he doesn't understand. That scene, the one in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, is one of the only moments in the entire series where Draco drops the performance completely. No sneer, no superiority, just a boy sobbing because he is being crushed by an expectation he never agreed to and cannot survive. And here's the detail that makes this whole story land different once you know it. Draco actually succeeds at the technical part of his mission. He fixes the broken vanishing cabinet in the Room of Requirement, creating a passage that lets Death Eaters sneak into Hogwarts. That's real. That's Draco, at 16, pulling off something genuinely dangerous and difficult under unbearable pressure. But when the moment finally arrives, when he's standing on the astronomy tower with his wand raised at Dumbledore, he can it. Dumbledore, weakened and dying anyway from a curse he took earlier that year, looks at this terrified boy and doesn't threaten him. He offers him a way out. He tells Draco he can see he isn't a killer, that there's still a path back. And for one suspended moment on that tower, you watch a 16-year-old boy standing at the exact fork his entire childhood was built to avoid. Follow the mission and become a murderer, or fail and hand his family over to torture and death. He doesn't get to choose either, actually, because Snape steps in and casts the killing curse himself, honoring the vow he made to Narcissa. Draco is spared from committing murder, but he's also robbed of ever proving to himself or his father that he could finish what he started. He walks away from that tower having failed the one task his entire upbringing was designed to prepare him for. And crucially, nobody in his life ever tells him that failing was the right call. That's the fear, not death. Draco watched death happen constantly during his 6th and 7th years, and it never seemed to be the thing that broke him. What broke him, over and over, was the possibility of being the Malfoy who couldn't deliver, the son who let the family down, the one who proved, once and for all, that the name didn't mean what his father always promised it meant. You see this fear again, even more nakedly, in Deathly Hallows. Harry, Ron, and Hermione get captured and dragged to Malfoy Manor, disfigured just enough by a stinging jinx that their identities are in question. And Draco is asked point-blank by his own father and by Bellatrix Lestrange to confirm whether the boy in front of him is Harry Potter. He knows. Of course he knows. He spent 6 years staring at that scar across a classroom. But watch what he does. He hesitates. He mumbles. He refuses to give a clear answer either way. Some viewers read this as mercy, as the last flicker of conscience in a boy who's seen too much. And that reading isn't wrong. But look closer and there's something else happening too. Draco isn't just protecting Harry, he's protecting himself from the unbearable weight of being the one who hands Harry Potter over to Voldemort and watches what happens next. Because if he confirms it's Harry, he becomes the instrument of whatever horror follows. And if he's wrong, if he identifies the wrong boy and it blows up in front of the Dark Lord himself, that failure could cost him and his entire family everything. Either way, the fear isn't about right and wrong, it's about consequence. It's the same fear that's been steering him since he was 11 years old. It's worth pausing here to flag something important, because this next part blends established canon with reasonable interpretation, rather than a direct line from the books. J.K. Rowling never gives us an explicit passage where Draco articulates, "I fear failure more than death." That's an inference built from his actions across 7 books. The trembling hands on the tower, the refusal to confirm Harry's identity, the way he flinches whenever his father is mentioned. The pattern is textually supported, but it's a reading of subtext, not a quoted fact. What is explicit in the text is how the war ends for the Malfoys. By the final battle at Hogwarts, Lucius, Narcissa, and Draco are sidelined, terrified, clearly no longer believers in Voldemort's cause, even if they never publicly renounce it. And in one of the quieter, stranger beats of the entire saga, Narcissa is the one who ultimately helps Harry. When Voldemort sends her to check if Harry is dead in the Forbidden Forest, she asks him a single whispered question: "Is Draco alive back at the castle?" Harry confirms he is, and Narcissa lies to Voldemort, tells him Harry is dead, purely so she can get back to her son. Not because she suddenly believes in Harry's cause, because in the end, the fear that ruled that entire family for years was never really about ideology at all. It was about protecting their own from becoming collateral damage in someone else's war. That's the final irony sitting at the center of Draco's story. He was raised inside a value system engineered to prove his family's superiority, and the actual lived experience of that value system was constant, grinding fear. Fear of Voldemort, fear of failure, fear of dishonoring a name that, when you look closely at what it actually cost the people who carried it, brought them nothing but suffering. By the time we reach the epilogue, 19 years later, Draco is a grown man, standing on platform 9 3/4 with his own son Scorpius, heading off to Hogwarts. It's a brief moment, wordless mostly, just a nod exchanged across the platform with Harry. But if you followed everything that came before it, that nod carries weight. It's 2 men who both grew up inside legacies bigger than themselves, standing there as fathers now, hopefully choosing not to hand their own children the same fear they were handed. Whether Draco actually broke that cycle, the books never fully confirm. That's left to the reader's imagination. But the boy who once believed failure was worse than death spent his entire adolescence proving that belief nearly destroyed him. And maybe that's the quiet lesson buried under all the sneering and the green and silver ties. The kids who seem the most certain of their own superiority are sometimes the ones most terrified of what happens the moment they slip. If you want to keep unpacking stories like this one, come hang out with us in Avenzo. Our channel is built for people who actually wants to know about their loved characters instead of just guessing at it. Hit subscribe to Avenzo and press the bell icon to get updated. Avenzo, real stories of fictional characters.